With handgun sights, the compromise we're making is speed versus accuracy. What I mean is the more precise the sights are, that is, the thinner the front blade is and the tighter it fits between the rear forks, the more precise you're going to be able to be when lining up your shot. However, the more precise the sights are, the slower they usually are to work with when desiring quick target acquisition. Okay? At the other end of the spectrum, we have big, thick sights that fit loosely between the rear fork. The bigger they are, the easier it is to see them, and therefore the faster you're able to be when you're trying to put them on target quickly, but the less precise you're ever able to be when you're shooting for accuracy. And so that's the balance you're trying to strike with handgun sights. So what's the right answer? What is the compromise we should make with sights? Well, the good news is you don't really even have to think about this, because if you buy a Tier 1 combat handgun that was designed with self-defense combat in mind, then the decision's made for you. And regardless of the size of these weapons, the sights are almost always going to be very, very similar. And I'll tell you right now, they're always erring on the side of speed. And they're not precise. They're not competition sights at all, but they're erring on the side of speed. And why is that? Well, that's because there's something out there that I refer to as the statistical most likely situation that you'll find yourself in with your handgun that will require deadly force. And we talk about that a lot more in the complete concealed carry guide to effective self-defense. But essentially what these statistics show us is that most violent combat with handguns takes place well within 21 feet, sometimes even so close that you can't even use your sights. In those situations, whether you're firing from retention or low retention or high retention, or if it's too dark, or if the psychological impacts of stress and adrenaline make it so that you can't even see your sights, in those situations it's irrelevant. But for all other situations, you want to be able to put your sights on target as fast as possible and then begin pulling the trigger. And so in those situations, competition sights that are very precise and require some significant skill to line up and to hold, that's not going to help you a whole lot. You want big sights that are very easy to put on target and press the trigger. And so you don't have to think about it a whole lot because they're going to be set up that way by default, but just remember that aside from some very specialized applications, in a self-defense handgun, you're almost always going to want fast sights. Big, clunky sights, the ones that come on your handgun by default, if it's a Tier 1 handgun, are almost always going to be good enough. Now, I did mention some specialized applications. One thing that we see that is becoming more and more popular is, and you can tell this is an unloaded handgun, it's called the RMR. The RMR is a red dot sight mounted on top of a handgun. Adds a lot of precision capabilities to the handgun. I mean, you can be a lot more accurate with this than you can be with simple iron sights. However, it is slower. And given that most combat that we defensive guardians will find ourselves in happens at a very close range, the advantages of the RMR fall off and its disadvantages come up. Now, if you're talking about a more offensive role, for example, if I was a police officer, I probably would train with an RMR because some of their combat can take place at a greater distance. But for us private citizens, in almost all situations, you're going to be fine going with the factory default sights that come on a Tier 1 combat grade handgun.